Greetings, YouTubians, and welcome back to Wayne Sharp World, where today I've got a knife for you that I was very excited to bring to you guys. This is a model that I have reviewed in the past, but this is a completely new version of this model, and when I heard about this version, I got super stoked for it, and I had to get it on the channel, and thanks to American Bladeworks, I have an example to show to you guys, and this is none other than the American Bladeworks Model 1 Titanium Frame Lock. Now, before I go any further into this review, I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in today. If you like what you see, please do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, follow along, and I will continue to bring you the content. Now, let's take a look at some overall specs on this knife right here. We have an overall length of 7.92 inches, with a blade length coming in at 3.25 inches, and a blade width of 974 thousandths. Blade thickness on this guy is 127 thousandths, with an S35 VN steel blade, a drop point style blade with a flat grind, a handle length coming in at 4.67 inches, and a handle thickness at 463 thousandths. Handle width on this guy is 1.04 inches, with, of course, kind of the highlight of this entire version, the full titanium handle with a frame lock for the locking mechanism and a user of a right or left hand tip-up carry. Not something you see a lot with the milled titanium handles. Usually, they don't give lefties that option. They have that here. That's very important to know because lefties may very well like this model as well. We have a weight coming in at 3.8 ounces and a price coming in at $289. Now keep in mind, this is a fully American-made knife. This is a truly fully American-made knife. Not gonna point any other directions, but this knife is sourced, milled, made in America. If you guys know anything about American Bladeworks, they are true to that Made in America slogan, so no worries there. Let's take a look at some size comparisons. Let's see what size of a knife we have here. If you guys know anything about this knife, you probably already know, but let's cover it anyway. Let's start off with a couple Spydercos. Here we have the Spyderco Shaman, and we also have Spyderco PM2, the two iconic models from one of the biggest names in the entire folding knife industry. And as you can see, they measure up relatively well with the Shaman. The PM2 is almost always bigger than everything because of that big old bubbly handle it has. But yeah, it lines up somewhat well with the Shaman. It's obviously shorter, but not by much. Maybe a third of an inch. Yeah, I would say about a third of an inch shorter than the Spyderco Shaman. Pretty good size comparisons there. Got a couple other ones. Let's hop on the Benchmade train and take a look at some Benchmade models. I think that'll give you even more of a good idea of just exactly what we have here. We have the Benchmade 940, and we have, of course, you knew it was coming, the Benchmade Bug Out, even though I completely botched that flip and looked absolutely pathetic doing it. You know what? I ain't proud. That's okay. There we go. Here's a lineup with these two, and I think now, between those two, these two, you guys know what we got here. Pretty good sized knife. Not small, not huge. Very nice EDC size. And now let's get into this. Let's talk about this model. If you guys have seen my previous review of this knife, the previous review was pretty positive. I didn't have a lot of bad things to say. In terms of this blade, you know, in all honesty, it's about the same. There hasn't been any real improvements to the blade that I've noticed. It's the same nice, pretty slicey drop point blade. An edge coming in at 18 thousandths, S35 VN steel, good heat treatment. It's got the same great choilish area here to get that good grip on, and you kind of have the jimping up there that's very nice. It just feels good in hand. You have a nice stonewash finish that really is, I guess it is just pretty much stonewashed. Every once in a while, when I first got this knife, I looked at it and I thought it was a little bit more of a unique stonewash. Maybe it's kind of like borderlining that kind of like frosted look. But at the end of the day, I would consider it just a stonewashed finish. Not trying to really say too much about it, but it just looked different to me out of the box. And I thought, what was it? What was making me think, why does this knife look different? I thought maybe it was the stonewash finish, but at the end of the day, it is just pretty much a nice stonewash finish. A lot of similar attributes to the old American Bladeworks Model 1. Not a whole lot of things have been made better, but it's still really good, and that's important. You didn't take something that was already good and made it worse, or made it give it any problems, or did something to it that it didn't need it. You stuck with what worked. I'm really glad Michael did that. Michael is the owner of American Bladeworks. Really good guy. He did send this knife to me for review. So, just so you guys know, I have a very unbiased approach to my reviews. I think you guys know that. It's why some brands won't necessarily work with me, because I've said things that they didn't really like, and it wasn't to stir the pot. It wasn't to do anything other than give you an honest review. Michael knew what he was getting into, and he sent it to me anyway, so I do appreciate that. But at the end of the day, I really did like the original Model 1, so I didn't anticipate disliking this. I was really worried there wasn't going to be any silly changes made to it that would have changed that. So far, I am happy to report that there has not been, and by so far, I'm pretty sure that there hasn't been, because I've carried this now for, 3.5 days. I've really enjoyed carrying it. The blade does really well. Going into the handle and ergos, they're just as good as the original. Not much has changed. It does feel a little different in the hand with that, milled titanium instead of the micarta. I actually do prefer the milled titanium. I gotta say, I used to be a micarta nut. Like, I would want everything micarta. Then I started getting into the world of a little more titanium, a little more carbon fiber. I started to really appreciate those, and I started to get a little more caught up in those. And now I will say, while I still love micarta, I really do appreciate some quality milling, and that is exactly what you have here. Very nice feeling milling. Clean, flawless, grabs your grip, gets your attention, you pull it up and you look at it real close and see, okay, where did he F up on this milling? Where did something get messed up? And there's not really any points. If, some people would say, oh, my finger catches this area. It's kind of sharp here, I'll admit that, but you know what? It's only sharp there if I put my finger there and feel for it. In terms of using the knife, putting it in my pocket, out of my pocket, deploying the blade, holding it, using it like you would a knife, I don't feel this one bit. And I wanted to point that out because some people point this out. And I'm not calling anyone out. I'm simply saying, me personally, my honest review, if I go reaching for something, that's my own fault. The way I review a knife is I use it, I carry it, I hold it in my hand, and if it feels good, if it looks good, if it works good, it's good. I don't go looking for problems, and I don't have any problems with this knife, and I wanted to address that because some people would say, well, why didn't you address it? Well, that's why I did address it, but I also don't care about it because it doesn't affect my use of the knife. So there's that. Take it for what it's worth, but it was important for me to say. Now, the rest of this milling, it's good. It's flawless, it's clean, it feels good, it looks good. I'm a big, big fan of this milling. As far as the left carry option, that is absolutely fantastic. I'm a right-handed guy in terms of my carry. I actually write and eat with my left hand. If I'm using a spoon or a fork or a pencil or pen, I'm using my left hand. But for everything else, including a knife, I'm a righty. So at the end of the day, I love you lefties, but I don't so much care if a knife is left-handed because I'm a righty. But since I review knives, since I'm more than just a pocket knife enthusiast and a hobbyist, I'd like to pay some attention to that. And to see such a nicely crafted knife have that lefty option with the milled titanium, I think that's awesome. You don't see that a lot. So I'm going to give him props for that, and I know you lefties are really going to appreciate that. If you're a lefty, you better shout out in that comments and tell Michael thank you, because there's not a lot of guys that do that, not a lot of companies that do that. I think that's really important. I think that's really cool, and I had to specify that. Now, going into the Lockbar, you have all the bells and whistles on this. You have the over travel stop. You have the Lockbar insert. You got everything you want in a titanium frame lock, or really any type of frame lock, whether it's titanium or not. You want that insert, you want that over travel stop. Is it really necessary and absolutely needed? Some people would argue that. I always like to see it, especially when you're talking anything over, the $150 mark. You're up to $289 here. You want those extra little options because you're spending your hard-earned money, and you know what? At the end of the day, it's only going to help the product. So it's really nice that it has that, and that is worth noting as well. Now, in terms of the Lockbar cutout, this is something that I really like on this knife. This is something that's just very visually attractive to me. Instead of that straight line, you have this knife kind of wave going. It's a very nice wave. It's attractive. It just looks good. It's a little different. Goes down nice and deep. You have the nice relief on the inside of the knife and not on the outside, so it's a little less visually distractive there. So just a nice line, and it kind of curves and leads into the pocket clip, and it blends in relatively well there. Not exactly the same, but well enough to where it just looks good, and it just looks really attractive. And on the other side, it's super clean. So there's a lot of really good things going on for this handle. And the clip is another good thing. The original Model 1, when I reviewed it, I said this was too thin, and I said the clip retention wasn't good enough. While Michael did make some changes, they weren't big changes, but they're noticeable changes. This is just a tad thicker, but adds a lot more stability to that clip. And the retention is a lot better. The retention, to me, is probably 2 or 3 times stronger than the clip that I handled on the original Model 1 with the micarta scales I had. So huge props there. That's a huge difference. Even though it doesn't look like a big difference, it really is. It feels a lot stronger, and it does look a lot stronger if you actually had the old model to compare it to. But I wouldn't be nearly as worried about this guy getting bent or mangled if I caught a corner. Now, could it happen? Of course it could happen. It depends how hard you're going and how reckless of a person you are. I'm actually a pretty reckless idiot, so who knows what could happen. But at the end of the day, he did make improvements, and that's worth noting because a lot of times, I make improvements and I suggest improvements and they just get overlooked and they never get made. And I'm not saying I was the reason for this improvement. I'm simply saying I noticed something, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one that said it. I'm not trying to go down that rabbit hole. But nonetheless, I'm happy to see that there is a stronger clip retention, and it does appear to be considerably thicker here on this pocket clip than the other version that I handled. So very nice to report that. Now, going into the action at the end of the day is very, very good. There's one thing that I would probably say: the detent feels a little soft to me, but there's just as many pros to that as there is, maybe not that many negatives. But what's most important is, at the end of the day, what you can do with this is really flip the blade out, and what is going on here? This has been super smooth the entire time, and now all of a sudden, I think I got something caught in the bearings here. Did I get something caught in the bearings? Very, very weird. I've literally been okay, there it goes. I'm pretty sure I got something in the bearings there, because I literally have had this knife for over a week now, and it's been this smooth the entire time, and all of a sudden, it was like getting stuck and slowing down on me. Very, very weird. But as you can see, the proof's in the pudding of this video. Very smooth blade action. What I was going to say before I was so rudely interrupted by that weird change in the action was the detent's a little soft. Now, with that being said, the nice thing about that detent being soft is even if you put some pressure on the frame lock, on the actual lock bar, I'm putting a lot of pressure on it right now, you still can rocket that blade out. There's a lot of knives, super premium knives, that you can't do that with if you put too much pressure on that frame lock. This is not one of those knives. That's really nice. So you have the option to where, if you're one of those really minded people and you know how to properly 100% deploy a flipper, which in my opinion, the proper way to deploy a flipper is by putting majority of the pressure on the actual clip, so you're not putting pressure on the frame lock. That's kind of just a rule of thumb for a frame lock flipper. The blade rockets out. Now, even if you don't do that and you put a lot of pressure on that frame lock, it still comes out because the detent's a little softer. But at the end of the day, you have to, I'm shaking it pretty hard. I'm going to try not to hit the camera and shake it really hard. It's still not coming out. So at the end of the day, It's a softer detent, but it's not one to where the blade is likely to come out from it. So if you handle a lot of knives, you kind of know how that works. But at the end of the day, it's still a very nice detent that works really great with this knife. The flipper, even though it doesn't have the grippiest, most detailed jimping, it still works. This is definitely one that can be probably more light switched. It can be push buttoned, but at the end of the day, you really do need to light switch it to get that most desired action. And at the end of the day, guys, this is a knife that I originally liked, and it's one that I really like in the titanium version. You got a detent that just works great with the knife. You have a lot of detail in the milling. You have a super solid construction with all the bells and whistles, from the over travel stop to the Lockbar insert to the full, titanium construction and the American-made quality. Coming in at $289, I do think it's a pretty solid offering. There's not a lot of things I would change to this, because at the end of the day, could I make changes to every knife I review? I could, but then they'd all start looking the same. I think I've said that before, but at the end of the day, you have to appreciate each knife for what it is, the qualities it has, and compare all that with the value that's within it. And, at the end of the day, does it make sense for you? I think this makes sense to a lot of people. I think it's going to sell very well. I think last time I saw this knife was sold out, I believe. I'm going to have it linked below regardless, because I'm sure Michael, he adds a few models in stock every once in a while because he's constantly working. So these will become available, as they're available, and there will be a link below for that. But guys, at the end of the day, it's definitely one I would recommend if you are in the market for a new titanium frame lock folding knife made in America. This is one you really want to look at, the American Bladeworks Model 1 titanium frame lock. Let me know what you guys think of this. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And until the next one, I'm out.